This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daryl.
Welcome to the first in a new series of Thinking Tackle. We're here at Gigantica Lake in northeastern France, which is a 35-acre gravel pit with over 600 carp in it. Some of them go to over 70 pounds, hence the name Gigantica. We booked the lake for a week, myself and a few friends. We've spread ourselves all around, and during the show we're going to go through all the different tips and tactics that we use for snaring these really wily carp. As you can see, it's late October, it's the end of the season, they've had pressure all year and they're not going to give themselves up easily. But my old mate Clive, true to form, has caught one already. So let's go and have a look and see how big it is. Well, it's not the giant we were looking for, mate, is it?
Not quite, but
it's a fish.
First Gigantica carp.
Very, very nice indeed. A stunning, stunning creature. Now, part of the stocking plan at Gigantica is to actually remove these little fellas and put them in the stock pond to grow them onto a bigger weight and then introduce them back into the lake, so all the fish left in the lake grow even faster as well. So this one's how big?
£15 on the nail.
£15. So anything under £20 going in the stock pond. So we're going to transfer him up there now. Next time you see him, he'll probably be £25. I've chosen to fish a swim called Coe's Point, basically because it covers a large area of the centre of the lake. So whether it's blowing westerly, which it is now, or easterly, I've still got some wind pushing through the swim. I fished this swim back in September for a different project that we were doing and caught extremely well out of it. Followed in Ian McMillan into the swim, who'd done brilliantly the week before, and I managed to snare a couple of the real big uns out of here as well. So it's got loads of scope in this swim. My middle rod is basically straight out in front of me at about 100 yards. The right hand rod is probably a rod length or so to the right at the same sort of distance, and the left hand rod a rod length or so to the left. Just fan them out at sort of 90 to 100 yards. I haven't used the marker float. The bottom here is perfectly flat. There's nothing to find out there whatsoever. And rather than thrashing it to a foam with a marker float and scaring all the fish away that are already there, I've just put 3 rods out and just throwing stick boilies out all over the top of it. So if you haven't seen one before, that is a throwing stick. A very, very lightweight tube that's curved at the end. It's got a handle so you don't let go of it. And I'm putting out 20mm cell boilies into the throwing stick. I'm doing 2 at a time at the moment, and there is a technique to it. It takes a little bit of getting used to. So I'm putting 2 in at a time. I'm using both hands, and I'm starting off with my weight on my back foot. So I'll be leaning back a little bit, whacking it out there, and it's very much like a cast. I'll be whacking it out there and the weight will be transferring through my body onto my front foot. So let's have a couple of goes. There we go. I've got the wind behind me today, so it's making the job easier. They've gone about 90. I need to aim a little bit lower. Oh, that one's split. Now, if the boilie's split, just wet the end of the stick like that. And what that does is it reduces the backspin on the baits and they don't split. The downside is you tend to put them up in the air. So you have to sort of force the stick lower so that they don't go right up in the sky and go no distance. And they're going out there lovely now. Now, I started the session off with 4 kilos of boilies at about 100 yards. And I've not had a bite yet. and the reason I'm putting more bait in now is there are bream in this lake, and they will still eat 20 mil boilies. That's why I'm not spodding and using particle and pellets. You just bring the bream in. There's loads of big roach here as well, and you're going to bring them in too, which I don't want to do. I just want to have a bed of boilies out there. Hopefully those smaller fish will either ignore them or not eat too many, and then when the carp come along, I'll get a bite off the carp. So because nothing's happened last night and there's fish showing near the spot but not on it, I'm going to put out another kilo or so of boilies and try and attract them in with it. And the frequency and the time that you bait up makes a massive difference to catching a knot. Because if I had the fish showing in my swim now, one after the other, and I baited up on their heads, I'd probably scare them away. But because there are fish showing near me but not on me, you can put bait out and draw them back in again. And a big mistake that I see people make, they get up in the morning, they've not had a run, it's first light, the best time to get a bite, and they put more bait out and ruin their chances. So the best time to bait up is when you're not expecting a take and you want to draw the fish back in again. So let's get a bit more out there. Just like any other lake that I'm fishing, the rig that I'm using is absolutely critical for success. Gigantica is different from other places, so I've made things slightly differently to suit the fishing situation here. So to start off with, I've got a snowman set up on, so I've got a pop-up boilie on the top, a bottom bait there, and I've trimmed a little bit off of each one so they join together a little bit neater, so they look a little bit more like a standard bottom bait. It's going to fly up into the fish's mouth a little bit easier because of the buoyancy of that pop-up. And I've attached that to a size 4 hook with a curved shank. Very long point on this hook, they're very, very sharp. And I've just angled the hook link in even more there with a bit of shrink tube to help that hook flip over and catch hold aggressively. And I've had to make the hook barbless because there are barbless rules here on Gigantica, and having that shrink tube on just helps that barbless hook to stay in that little bit better. So any rig that you're setting up, if you put extra bit of shrink tube on there, you will definitely get less hook pulls. There's a little bit of the coating stripped back there, so I've exposed the braid on the inside of this stiff coated material. And then onto it as well, you can see there I've put a couple of hook link weights on there, but round the one nearest to the hook I've put loads of tungsten putty to make it really, really heavy. And what that's there to do is to help it drop down in the fish's mouth, help that hook turn over and catch hold and grab even more aggressively. Obviously it also pins everything to the lake bed, which I think is very important. At the other end, I've crimped it rather than tied a knot in it. This stiff material is quite easy to crimp, and that crimped round a little product there called a link loop makes it very, very strong, much stronger than tying a knot, and it's very simple to do as well. And then that's attached to a link loop which pulls inside a lead clip there under just a little bit of tension. So it's a semi-fixed rig, but if there's any pull on the other end by a fish, it will pull out. And what that basically does, it means when the fish sucks the bait in and feels that there's something wrong, a lot of the time they shake their head. We've seen it on the underwater filming, and they try and get rid of the hook by shaking the lead backwards and forwards and pulling the hook out. With this rig, the more they shake their head, the more the lead just slides away from them, and it makes it harder and harder for them to get rid of it. And on a lake like this where there are not many snags, that's what I would prefer, a running rig system. I think it really does muck the fish up, especially if most people use semi-fixed rigs, which they do on most lakes. And that is set up with a safe zone leader. Everything there is gravel coloured because the bottom here at Gigantica is very, very light in colour. And I've even got a lead on there that's been specially made for Gigantica that's much lighter in colour. The coating on it is much lighter so that everything blends in really well. And then up that safe zone leader, there's a couple of rubber beads on there. That stops the lead coming off the end of the leader on the take. So it's a little bit of a backstop effect, so it's going to jolt the hook a little bit more, but really it's just to slow the lead down. If the line breaks, they'll push off the end of the leader, no problem, and the fish will get away from the lead system. So that's the first one. That's sort of my favourite, if you like, for fishing in open water. But there are swims here which are snaggy. There's a tree line swim where you're casting over right underneath the trees. There I want to dump the lead. So first of all, I've changed from a running system to a hybrid lead clip, which basically if you pull against that, the lead will always come off. And there's a couple of other swims on the other bank there which are also snaggy. You want to be dumping the lead straight away there. So I've still got a safe zone leader on, but I've got a hybrid lead clip version which dumps the lead really quickly. So I'll swap from one to the other depending on the swim. The rig is almost exactly the same, a stiff coated material. I've got a longer shank hook on there. You can see again I've got a bit of shrink tube on that's angled in really aggressively to hold that hook in. I've made the hook barbless as well. Still got the rig ring on the hook, which I prefer, so the hair's coming off the hook near the point, and can you see the hook bait there has changed. I've got an Indian spice pop-up there as the top of my snowman, and then just a standard bottom bait that I've been feeding in the swim as well. So that seems to be getting most of the bites on this lake this season. So I've got one rod on that. I've got the other two on the pop-ups that I've made myself because they've been so successful. So those are the rigs that I recommend on this venue. I've caught loads of fish on them before, and I'm sure as the week progresses, I'm going to get a few more.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa.
The kit that you use for long range fishing is absolutely essential. If you've got the wrong stuff, you're just not going to be able to get the bait out there. During the summer on this lake, you can catch them from 20 yards to sort of 100 yards. Later in the season, the fish do move further out, so you need the kit to get out there, and it does make the job a lot easier if the kit's well balanced like this. So I've got a 12-foot rod, and it's a 3 3/4 pound test curve, so very, very fast taper, and that means when you cast, the rod goes from bent to straight very, very quickly, and that helps it cast a lot further. I've got big eyes on the rod as well, 50mm butt ring on the rod, and also a long handle as well. That helps move the tip of the rod faster and get the rig out there. And I've got a long cast reel as well, and that's loaded with 12-pound fluorocarbon, which is not a brilliant casting line, but I'm only fishing at 110 yards, which is more than comfortable for me. I've got spare spools, and I would probably put a 15-pound proper casting line on there if I wanted to go a long way. And if I wanted to go a really long way, I'd probably put 10-pound on and fish a leader, but I can get 12-pound fluorocarbon 110 yards pretty easily. Now, if you watch the stance that I use when I'm actually casting, the weight will start off on my back foot and transfer through, and my arms will be nice and extended. I'm not casting with my elbows, my arms will be up there. I've got this clipped up at 110, so I'm just checking behind me, make sure the bail arm's open, nothing's tangled around the tip. And out she goes, right up to hit the clip. Let's hit the clip. Just feel it down. Donk. Nice and firm out there. The fluorocarbon's not got as much stretch in it, and it sinks brilliantly, and that's the main reason that I'm using it. So I'll just sink that line down, get all 3 rods back out there again, a little bit more bait over the top, and hopefully this evening or tonight something will occur. One of our guests on the show is the mighty Daryl Peck, who's torn himself away from smashing up one of the waters in Essex to try and catch a few of the big ones in here. This is your second swim, mate, already, isn't it, in 24 hours?
Yes, mate. Lost a fish last night on a long-range mark out in the middle of the lake. Refound the spot today. Got Danny, the head bailiff, here to go out and put some bait round it.
Yep.
Unfortunately, once I came to cast it, the wind had changed and I couldn't hit it, and with fish showing behind it,
I saw a couple today, mate, proper head and shoulder at the back of the spot, didn't they?
It was prime, but unfortunately, if I can't get there and the bait's out there, I know the fish will be on it and I'll be too short. So there was a lot of fish in front of this swim this morning and last night.
Loads.
So with the wind pushing in here, it's much more comfortable for bank fishing. I thought it'd be a better bet.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. It looks wicked out here at the moment. With this, it's like northwesterly. This is pushing in here, and yeah, they were here in big numbers, weren't they, this morning? Yeah. Well, we'll leave Daryl to it. I'm going to get back to my rods. I've put out a little bit more bait, and the fish have started showing off the back of the area. So I reckon tonight, hopefully, they'll migrate back in, and tomorrow morning we'll have some very big fish to show you. Well, it is now 2:20 in the morning. I've just had my second carp of the night, 23-pound common, which I'm saving for you to show you in the morning. I've had a scraper 20 mirror as well, a linear, really beautiful fish. That one's saved as well, so we'll be able to show you that when it gets light. And they are showing out in front of me like mad at the moment. I'm struggling to get back to sleep again. It wouldn't surprise me if the other lads have had bites as well, because the fish are really active, even though tonight it's about 4 degrees at the moment. This time last night it was 14 degrees the first night we were here. Amazing for almost November. But even though it's cooled down, the fish are still really active and they're obviously feeding. My shoulders are absolutely killing me because I've put another 2 kilos of bait out and I'm a little bit stiff and sort of out of practice, but I'm sure I'll get into the groove of it more during the week. But that's the situation so far. It's looking very good for more, and we'll be showing you those fish in the morning. Well, good morning. After an extremely hectic night's fishing, I've just had 2 on at once. Fortunately, Billy has ridden round here on the bike from his swim. He's fishing the beach, and I've just landed what looks like a sort of scraper 20 on the other rod, and this one feels a bit bigger. Got 3 others to show you as well. I know Daryl's caught 1 too, at least one. Look at it go. God. Do you want to net him, William? It's common. Nice common as well. He's hooked in the mouth. He was just deadly powerful. Come on, fella, in you go. Got him! Nice one, Billy. Wicked. What a start to the day. Brilliant. Right, well, I'm not going to do the fish pictures yet. I've got the fish languishing in the sling down there. The other one's in one of the 2 landing nets. I've cast both rods back out without rigs on. Got them under the line under the clip, so I'm going to take marks in exactly the same position, marking the distance, wound it back in, and I'm going to get both rods back out there and another kilo of boilies before I do the fish pictures. Because when it's happening like this, if you spend 2 hours mucking about getting it all done, the fish can go off the feed, move away from the spot. This way you can carry on the feeding spell longer and hopefully get more action. So let's get this one out there. Lovely. That's bang on my right hand mark. Let's give the line a sink. To be honest with you, I really wasn't expecting this much action at this time of the year and so early in the week, but I've done exactly what I did in the swim when I fished it in September. Just kept the bait going in, and as you can see, even though I've got the wind off my back here, it's blowing almost northwesterly at the moment, probably west-northwest. The fish are still here, they've come back onto the bait, so let's get this one down. Just let that line tighten and then get the other rod out. Well, it's now 9:30, and I haven't even had a chance to do my fish pictures yet. And this rod's away again after another 1.5 kilos of boilies going out there this morning after those couple of bites. And it just sort of emphasises how to fish this lake, because the guy who was in this swim last week had brilliant weather conditions, just like we've got now. I mean, it couldn't be more perfect for this time of year. It's mild, overcast, westerly wind, absolutely perfect. He had 2 bites for the whole week. I've had 6 bites now on my second night, nothing the first night. And the name of the game in these big open water areas where it's flat as a pancake is just feed at a range you think the fish are going to be at, and just keep the bait going in. And it has happened quickly for me, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to happen as quick as this, but if you consistently feed, you will get them. And what a lot of people tend to do is chase the fish around and fish all different spots in the same swim, and it doesn't pay off generally. So it's much better just to keep feeding one area. I've got all 3 rods at the same range, 110 yards, and I'm just feeding over the top of them continuously. And I would have kept doing that until I got bites, because when there's no features on the bottom of the lake, the bait becomes the feature. And if you keep putting it in the same place, eventually they will get on it. Big old oily boils coming up, a few bubbles, quite a big light coloured shape there in the water. It's a mirror, looks like a 30. Come here, you. Just see his big fat belly there. Come on. In you come. Yes! Got him! Wicked. Come on, that is brilliant. That's a big one. And how about that for a stunner? That's the best one that I had in the dark, 25.5 pounds. Proper gold plated, this one, really rare for France. Gigantica's full of fish like this, and they go to over 40 pounds, some of them. But well chuffed to get this one. This was the 3rd one I had in the dark, and earlier than that I had a 23 common, which really scrapped. And I started off my account with a really stunning 20-pound linear, which is only just 20 pound, so it only just missed the stock pond. So he's going back in the lake to be bigger next time. Well chuffed. And we've still got 3 more to show you. And how about that for a beautiful common carp? The bigger half of the early morning double take, 34.5 pounds. The other one was a 19.5 common, immaculate, but not big enough to stay in the main lake, so he's going in the stock pond. And this is one that Danny doesn't recognise either. So another new fish. How many surprises are left in this lake? It's incredible. And how about that to finish off a hectic night's angling on Gigantica? 42.5 pounds, guessed it, bang on the button. What a chunk of carp this is. It's absolutely solid as a rock, and his mouth is perfect. Danny doesn't recognise this one either, so it could be another new filter in here. God, he's heavy. What a stunning carp. Right, when we get this fella back, I'm going to show you how to use a boat safely and effectively, so you don't have to use the throwing stick all the time, and hopefully it's going to bring even more of these chunks into the swim. What a carp. Wicked.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa.
as you can see, the wind has changed round to a southeasterly, quite strong in my face now, and I'm struggling to get the boilies out there with a throwing stick. So I'm using one of the boats that's for hire here at Gigantica, and most importantly, one of the important rules here is you must have a life jacket on, and it must be done up. If Danny the bailiff sees you without one, then you'll get thrown off the site, whether you've paid for your holiday or not. So important. I've fallen in cold water before, and it totally takes your breath away. And the other thing you must never wear is waders, because they fill up with water and they suck you down. You see as well, although it's a nice day, I've got very little clothing on, very few layers. Even if it was cold, I'd still have the same layers on, because if you go over the side, cotton has got no thermal qualities whatsoever, and it just weighs you down. Doesn't keep you warm, and it just weighs you down. So your best chance of swimming back is with just one layer on. Now I'm just scooting out, my float's over there. Scooting out to my float. Now the way I bait up when I'm using a boat is different from most people as well. What I tend to do is fall back short of the spot and catapult the boilies actually out, so that I'm not actually rowing around over the top of my spot. Just have a look where my float is. And the reason for that is I want to keep the disturbance over the top of the spot to an absolute minimum. And also, I want to get a nice spread of boilies. When you watch people from the bank baiting up with a boat, most of their bait goes in one spot. And I like to spread the bait out just like I do with a throwing stick, so you get the fish grazing over a wide area. Sometimes if you put it all in one spot, you can cast nowhere near it. I've seen loads of people do that. And also, if the fish pass by 10 yards away, they might never know it's there. So a good spread will keep you getting bites longer, especially if you're fishing on a big flat bottom like we are on Gigantica. Right, well, we're near the float now, so I'm just gonna get my boilies into the catapult and just whack them all over that area. Doesn't matter where they go, it's important to spread them right out. I'll actually try and sort of catch the catapult with my fingers, just to try and spread the baits out a little bit more. I've also chosen to do this at the worst time of the day for a bite, middle of the day, the sun's nice and high. And hopefully I won't be spooking any fish, but I will be drawing them in for when that sun drops down a little bit. It's all these little things, that was a good one, they went everywhere. All these little things make a big difference. Right, well that's 4 kilos of bait over the spot in double quick time, no aching shoulders, and hopefully that's going to bring the fish in fairly quickly. It's important to bait up with a boat at the right times of day as well. As I've said, I've chosen the middle of the afternoon when nothing's really happening. I wouldn't go out in the boat at first light. I would sometimes go out in the boat just before it gets dark. It's worth putting some bait out then, but if you think the fish are feeding in your swim, don't go out in the boat, and never go out in the boat at night, because it's mega dangerous. So providing you've got a life jacket on and you're sensible, it's a tool that you can use to your advantage. And the rules here on Gigantica are that you must cast your rigs from the bank. So don't be tempted to put a rig in a boat and take it miles out. You really don't need to. Well, we're round in Billy's second swim of the session. He's moved out the beach into Alcatraz, and it's all happened very quickly, mate, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. Brace of 30 commons in a couple of hours, really.
Nice.
Well,
you ain't got golden balls written on your rods for nothing, have you? So hopefully Bill's going to get some more, but what a way to start. Look at that creature. Absolutely wicked, and the other one was of the same stamp as well. So a very good start. I'm going to get my rods out, mate.
Okay.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa.
Well, I was just considering letting you know just how poor the conditions were at the moment and how unlikely it was going to be to get a bite, and the middle rod has roared off. I've had quite an eventful night. I've got a couple of commons close to 30 pound to show you. I had a 22 common as well. This fish is getting close now. 22 common in the middle of the night. Oh, really banging his head. Don't think it's a particularly big fish, this one. Yeah, the 22 common in the middle of the night, and 2 other occurrences which I'm sure were aborted takes on this same rod. Bobbin pulled up to the top and nothing else. And I was so tired and my shoulders were aching so much from the throwing stick that I left it, to be honest, and I should have put more bait out and recast this rig. But I got up about 6 o'clock this morning, did what I should have done at 2 o'clock this morning, and rebaited, recast, and this is the rod that's roared off. So obviously we'll be showing you those 2 lovely commons I got during the night as well. There he is on the top there. It's only a baby. And also we've got one of the giants of Gigantica to show you, because Daryl up the other end has done a supreme bit of angling and caught one of the big ones. So I'm going to concentrate on this now because it's getting close. And there he is, 25 pounds on the button. There's 2 very distinct strains in here at this weight. There's the real scaly ones, and then the ones like this that have got hardly any scales at all. Both are going to grow big, but I reckon these ones are going to grow bigger. So we're going to get this fella back and then show you those 2 stunning commons that I had last night. Well, the sun has finally burnt off the early morning mist to show you these commons in all their beauty. This is the biggest one of the brace from last night, 29.5 pounds. The other one equally stunning at 28 pounds. One was taken on a bottom bait, the other one on a snowman setup, but both of these are mere babies compared to what Daryl's got round in his swim. So we're going to get these fellas back and show you an absolute monster. Well, we're over in Daryl's swim with an absolute monster on the bank, mate. Hoist him up, let's have a look at him. That is some creature. Yeah, look at that. How big?
58.12.
Wicked. Look at that. A new French PB as well?
Yep.
What a creature that is. Well, we're going to get some pictures of this fella for Daryl's album. Previous personal best in France?
27.
27. We're going to get some pictures of this one and get the fella back, and then obviously talk to him about the rig that he caught it on and the spot that he caught it from as well. So I'm going to get the camera and we're going to start clicking away. Look at that. What a creature. Well held to. Well, after returning that absolutely enormous fish, I've got Daryl on his own to talk rigs for a little while, and I remember watching the thinking tackle that he was in with Adam Penning, and it was quite an eye-opener how simplistic everything was that he used, and this isn't really any different, is it, mate, to be perfectly honest?
No, not at all.
So talk us through what you were using and why you were using it.
Okay. The rig I caught the fish on was a coated hook link with size 6 wide gate with a snowman rig. The only strip back bit is the hair.
Right, let's have a look, let's hold that. So you've got a coated hook link, knotless, tied on knotless knot style, yeah? And the only bit stripped back
is the hair.
Right, okay. And I noticed there as well, you've done a couple of extra turns and then or you've pulled the hair out of the way and done 2 more turns at the top. What does that do?
Just creates a better angle for the bait to sit out. When you're fishing a semi-buoyant bait, it just keeps the hook in the right position for the bottom lip.
Right, so it kicks away a little bit more aggressively.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, and talk to us about the hook bait you got on there.
I've got a fruitella pop-up.
Yep.
20mm cell bottom bait.
Right.
And that balances out lovely, and with just enough stiffness in the hook link, it just sits far enough away from the lead so there's a little bit of movement before it hits the lead.
Right, okay, so it's not all crumpled up in a heap on the bottom, it's a little bit away.
Yeah.
And when it's sitting on the bottom, if you put your hand out flat, is it sitting up like that? Is the hook laying flat? How do you like it?
I think at the starting point it is sitting literally on the bend like that.
Right, let's just...
Sitting on the bend like that, but over time as it takes on water it will lie down, but that's not a problem.
Right, okay. And that obviously that still turns extremely well.
Yeah.
Like that. Now, I've heard on the grapevine, because we've not fished together before, so I've heard on the grapevine that you are really fussy about hooks.
Yeah.
How fussy is really fussy?
Ridiculously.
Right.
I literally pour a packet straight onto a pop-up lid tub just for the whiteness, so I can see the point clearly.
Right.
And I row them up next to each other, and it's amazing. If you look closely, there's nothing wrong with the hooks, but I can pick out just by sight the better ones.
Right.
And I think it makes a big difference, depending on how many times you want to get picked up before you make a mistake properly.
Right, okay. And how many out of an average packet?
Sometimes only 50%.
Right.
But that doesn't mean to say I wouldn't catch on the other ones, because enough people do.
Yeah.
But I am literally taking the top 50%, and I think that gives me an edge.
Right, okay. Because you're fishing, back home, the fish you're fishing for are the real creme de la creme, the real big uns that are the hardest ones to catch.
Yeah, a lot of people say that if you're using a blunt hook, then that's why you lose fish. I'm not. That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. What I'm doing is for the bite. It's all about the bite.
Right.
I think that using a sharper hook will get you the bite quicker.
Right, so the hook goes in the fish's mouth. If it's needle sharp, it catches hold. When another one might be able to be ejected and blown back out again. Right, okay. And length of hook link, what makes you use that length?
Well, the bottom out is fairly soft, and we're fishing for really big fish.
Yeah.
So I just, with a big bait and a slightly longer hair, I want to give it more time before it makes contact, get it in its mouth a bit further back, allowing for the bottom as well. So that's what, usually I fish 7 inches, in here it's got to be nearly 12 inches, isn't it, around that sort of length.
Yep.
So that's why I've gone that length.
Right, cool. Okay, now you've got another one over there, another rig that's a little bit more fandango.
Yep.
Let's have a look at that one.
Right, this is very similar, but because it's a stiffer coated braid, this one.
Right.
And I've stripped back by the swivel here to allow for, if the inline lead that I'm using, which are these Skyline inlines, if it's going to dig into the bottom a little bit, it's just allow that to come up and then sit flush to the lake bed, rather than poke up on the balance bait that could end up leaving it pointing off the bottom, which I don't want. And little split shot just to keep it all nailed down.
Yep.
And then tiny little break, probably 3/4 of an inch between the shrink tubing and the end of the hook link. And again, I've whipped 2 turns afterwards for the aggressive angle, and that will turn every time as a standard. The sort of rig that most people like to use, a flip and turn.
Yep.
And that will keep the bait, full distance from the lead out in the lake.
I like that. That's very crafty, as we say, that on there. And I heard as well that you're always using inline leads all the time, which is not the norm, is it? Lead clips is what everybody uses. What makes you use an inline instead of a lead clip or helicopter rig setup?
Well, a lot of the time I'm using braided hook links, and I think, in my opinion, with tubing or lead core, that with a big bait, not a 15mm boilie, we're talking snowmen rigs or 20mm bottom bait, they won't tangle less. I think they tangle less on an inline than they do on a clip, say.
Right, okay.
But also, a lot of things that I take into consideration is the impact. Because we're fishing thinking that the carp's going to pick up the bait and swim away thinking it's got a free bit of food in its mouth. And I'm looking for the direct hit, a direct whack to the lead. With a lead clip, it can spin and not get direct contact immediately. So that's another reason why I use it.
Right. So the fish is picking the lead up from the heavy end first, and it's a more instant sort of jolt to the fish.
Hopefully taking it in past the barb straight away, rather than if it picks up the lid and starts shaking, hopefully it's done enough to make it stick.
Well, that's a very interesting insight into Daryl's rigs. I'm sure he's going to get more bites on them. It's not looking so hot, is it, at the moment? The wind's turned and, you know.
Well, I'm thinking there's enough bait out there, and the fish were obviously eating it last night, and I'm thinking hopefully a few will stay around and have another pick tonight. But if things don't happen here tonight and they're obviously not here, then I may move.
Yeah, £58 not enough, is it? More.
More.
Greed is good.
Greed is always good.
Greed is always good. I'm getting the rods back out again now in time for the afternoon and evening feeding spell. And as I do, I want you to watch basically how I'm sinking the line and getting everything to lay flat on the bottom, because these lakes are massively pressured, all these type of holiday venues. There's people on here from sort of April through to October every single week. The fish become massively line shy. So I'm using fluorocarbon, which is very heavy, to sink down on the bottom, but if you leave the line too tight, it can't even do that. So let's get this rod out there. I'm all clipped up at the distance, just check behind me. Out she goes. Hit the clip, lovely. And then just feel it down through the deep water. Donk. That's the lead hit the bottom. Fortunately, the reel was ended up in exactly the place I wanted it to, the handle, because they all have to line up as well, being the tackle tart that I am. And then I'm just going to sink the line with my hand, and that means that I'm not putting too much pressure on it. Because this is fluorocarbon, it sinks really well. If I was using a normal mono, if I wanted to go further, I'd be using a very supple mono, and I'd be using probably a flying back lead if I could get it there. But if I couldn't get it cast far enough with a flying back lead, I'd be using a back lead as well. But with this fluorocarbon, you don't actually need that. But if I was, let's turn that buzzer off. If I was using a back lead, now would be the time to put it on, because I've got the wind in my face at the moment, so there's no bow in the line, and I would slide that back lead out as far as I possibly could, because within 2 rod lengths of the bank, it's the same depth as it is right out there. So you slide the back lead out a long way and get the line pinned to the bottom, and then tighten up, and it will tighten the line down to the lake bed. But in this situation, what I'm going to do first of all, just make sure that it's pointing in the right direction, which it is. Put my bobbin on, and that will show you how this fluorocarbon sinks. Now, what I've basically done is mark the line with a little bit of foil tape when I cast the rigs out the first time, and then I'm using that marker to get back on the same spot. So once I've had a bite, I'll cast away from the swim, wind it back in until I feel that bit of tape click through the rings, put the line under the clip on the reel, wind it in, put a rig on, and whack it back out on the spot, so I can't cast it too far. And I'll do that day and night to make sure I'm ending up on my baited spot every time. So I've taken the line out of the clip. Let's just pull that bobbin like that, and we'll see the weight of the fluorocarbon will actually lift the bobbin up. That's how heavy it is. With normal mono, that tends not to happen, but you can see the bobbin starting to move now already. That creeping up, that's not a bite. That's the line sinking, which is pulling the bobbin up, and that should carry on going. Eventually it'll end up right underneath the rod, and I can pull some more off to get it lying flat. You see it creeping up there now. And this is the sort of thing it's worth taking your time over if you're using fluorocarbon, and just letting it sink and sink and sink. And the middle rod that I did a little while ago, the line's hanging down slack off the rod tip, almost looks like I'm not fishing. But when I get a bite, that'll pull straight up to the top. Right, that's pulled up to the top now, so it can't go any further. So I'll just pull off a load more slack and let it do that again. And that might happen 3 or 4 times until the line's sinking perfectly on the bottom. So well worth getting into fluorocarbon if you can cast it far enough, and if not, flying back lead and a back lead. Right, let's get the other rod out. And how about that for a stunning creature to finish the first show? 23 pounds of Gigantica magic. Absolutely chuffed with this one. It's my 14th fish of the session. And don't worry, we're going to be back at Gigantica for the next show. We've got 3 days of the session left to go. And I heard a rip-roaring take at 4 o'clock this morning. I haven't got a clue who got it or how big it is. So we'll be bringing you that one, plus loads of tips and tricks for these kind of waters. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the bank sometime.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa.